In this activity, we're going to again look at enzyme, but this time we're going to look at enzyme and compare it with surface area. So the enzyme that is in question is called catalase, and this is the quaternary structure of catalase. So catalase is an enzyme that is found in many different living organisms. The purpose of this enzyme is to actually break hydrogen peroxide into water and oxygen. So its primary function is to break down hydrogen peroxide, which is a harmful byproduct of metabolic processes, into something that is no longer harmful, which is water and oxygen. And this action is important because it helps protect cells from oxidative damage. So if we did not have this enzyme, we would have a lot more damage to our cells. So catalase makes it vital for our body as well as other living organisms system to be able to defend against oxidative stress. So hydrogen peroxide can be broken down into water and oxygen. And you've probably seen hydrogen peroxide at your local Walgreens or Rite Aid. Hydrogen peroxide can be brought in a bottle, and oftentimes we tend to use hydrogen peroxide to disinfect, like a wound. So the way that we're going to set this reaction up is we're going to use potatoes. Why potatoes? Because potato actually contains that enzyme, catalase. And so we're going to set up 3 conditions. We're going to have our control condition, which is going to be sand. We expect that there should be no catalase in sand. So this should result in basically a negative response. And then we have 2 more conditions. Since catalase is found in potatoes, we want to compare cubed potato to chopped potato. So using the same size starting product, we would then take that potato, either cube it up into larger cubes or finely minced it into smaller. So the difference between these two is surface area. This you can imagine as you biting or sucking on a full piece of candy. So let's say Jolly Rancher. You're sucking on a Jolly Rancher and it's dissolving, but it's dissolving pretty slow. And if you're anything like me, once you get to a certain point, you just get impatient and you bite down onto Jolly Rancher and break into a bunch of smaller pieces. These smaller pieces of Jolly Rancher now, relative to their volume, will have a much larger surface area. So we're increasing our surface area in this condition. So we'll set up these 3 test tubes and then we'll add hydrogen peroxide to all 3 test tubes. Let's go look at the experiment. For the next experiment, we're going to look at surface area. So we'll be using catalase right here. And we get our catalase from a potato. So what we're going to do is cut up the potato. And what I want is the potatoes to be roughly the same size. So we don't need that much. Probably only need that much. Okay. So I'm going to start off with 2 pieces about the same size. And what I'm going to do is one of them I'm going to chop. So I end up with 3 pieces roughly the same size. Our catalase in this tube and this tube, right? The difference between this tube versus this tube is just the surface areas of the potato. So this one has much more surface area compared to the potatoes in this tube. And then this one's just sand. So what we're going to do, this one's right here. We're going to add hydrogen peroxide to it. And I have hydrogen peroxide right here. I'm going to add roughly 2 milliliters. So So we'll start out with here. One of these tube is 1 milliliter, as you can see right here. So I'm adding 2 milliliters here. Okay, now you can see the reaction happening. And you can kind of see now, there's still some reaction happening, right? You can still see the catalase reacting to hydrogen peroxide, but a little bit less. And so if you look overall, the sand should have pretty much no bubbles. Our cube, which is our largest surface area, should have some bubbles, but the chopped one, which is our smallest one, should have the most bubbles. So if we were to actually measure and place it, we place it so sand, cube, and then chop. So this is the activity that you just saw us do. So again, we're looking at hydrogen peroxide, and hydrogen peroxide can be broken down into water and oxygen. And so this reaction will occur naturally, but it gets sped up faster by using an enzyme called catalase. So recall that enzymes are protein, and enzymes function by lowering the activation energy in different reactions to speed the reaction. All right, and we already mentioned that the catalase, our source, is going to be potatoes. So you saw real quick, after we prepared the potatoes, right, we had the cubed potato versus the minced potato, and then we had our sand, that as soon as we add the hydrogen peroxide, that we could start seeing some bubbling. So note which tube you saw what. So tube 1, with the small amount of sand, we saw basically no bubbling. So that should be a minus. And then in the cubed potato, we saw pretty good amount of bubbling, right? So we saw here a moderate amount. You can also put a strong bubbling depending on your tube that you saw. And then the last one, we saw a lot more bubbling. So we saw stronger bubbling. And so now I've let the reaction occur for roughly 5 minutes, and I'm going to show you what the tubes look like after 5 minutes. There's no reaction. There's still no reaction.
And then maybe that's so long because maybe BTS no.
So after 5 minutes, you could see that there was a lot more bubbles in the midst. So I just wanted to go over a few things to kind of wrap up this activity. So first of all, why were there bubbles? So hopefully you recognize that the reason why there were bubbles, if we look back at the reaction, that in the reaction, we formed the hydrogen peroxide. As it got broken down, it formed water and oxygen. So the oxygen is air, right? So this is what's causing, as the air gets pushed up, this is what's causing the bubbles to occur, is that oxygen air basically being released in the reaction. So you can measure how much reaction we have by how much bubbles we have. And so in this, we already filled out this table, but the reason why the one tube that had the minced potatoes right here, the chopped potato, or the minced potato, the last tube had the most bubble, was because it had the most amount of surface area, therefore had the most activity. It had the most surface area for the catalase and the hydrogen peroxide to meet in order to form water and oxygen. I also want to apologize for the loudness in the last section of the videos. My daughters, who are also at the ANZA, just came into the room, and everybody is very excited because BTS is coming back, and so we're all hyped up in whether or not we're able to get tickets the next day at the BTS pre-sale. Spoiler, we did get tickets, so we will be seeing BTS when they come to Stanford. Yay! All right, I will see you guys in the next lab, where I'm just going to show you what happens with pH, just to kind of review what pH is. See you then.